Now we're recording. You're good to go.
Okay, great. This is Candace Rubick. I'm here with Elizabeth Keller. This is the TSPC Program Completion Report webinar. We will be recording this for those who are unable to attend, and we do have a licensure guide that will be sent out. I wanted to run it through and make sure it works, and see if there are any tweaks that are needed to it. So the site that you see, I guess I haven't shared. I have to share. All right. All right. Let me know if you can see. I guess I can just reduce that. Can you guys see my computer screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So TSPC is working with each of the EPPs to receive a list of people who will be submitting the program completion reports, PCRs. We're moving away from calling them C2s just because nobody even knows why they were ever called C2. So we're just going to move to PCR. It's a new day. So the sign-in has its own process, so I'm not going to spend time going over that now. As soon as you're given rights, we'll send you an email with information on what you need to do. So for the purposes of this demonstration, you have already received that email and gone into e-licensing with your log on, okay? We are in the staging system right now, so none of what we do is actual, and none of the information that you see will be real information. It's all information that's been set into the system to test the system. The system will go live late tomorrow. When you get into work on Wednesday, you will be able to submit your program completion reports. TSPC will work with the EPPs to identify candidates who need to have their applications processed more quickly. Those are for people in particular who are being hired out of state or whose school district won't accept the letter that has been developed saying it's okay to work with these folks. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. So you've already logged on and signed in, and this is the system that you will see. Program completion report account search. Search for an applicant using a combination of their first name, middle name, last name, date of birth, and/or the last 4 digits of their social security number. It says, note a candidate may not ever submit an application for licensure, but they will have submitted the clinical practices request. So candidates, the first time they really need the e-licensing system is to complete their background check. So they'll have an account based on not that they have applied for a license, but because they've had to do their background check. So I'm going to use my grandson as our tester. We're going to go ahead and just enter his first name, which is Cohen, and hit search. And there's only one Cohen in the system, so it automatically pulls him up. If there were more than one, you'd get a list of all of the Cohens and further identifying information. It would also have their account number, their first, middle, last name, and the last 4 of their SSN. If you need to submit a program completion report for somebody who does not have an account, you will need to contact them and find out, do they not have an account? Because that's a problem. Why have they completed a program without having an account? Because they need to do it for fingerprinting. Most likely there's some sort of misspelling for their name or something like that. So the first test is, do they have an account? And if they've completed a program, they should. So once you get your person's account, there's their name, there's their account number, and you're going to be submitting a PCR for either teacher, personnel service, or administrative. I'm going to start with administrative because it's simple and quick and it'll kind of give you the rhythm of it. So you just click on which one you want and then select. Many of you, probably all of you at this point actually still are calling your programs IAP or preliminary administrator because it's now in rule as principal and professional. The system says principal and professional. So let's go ahead and say they completed your IAL or your preliminary administrator. You hit principal. Then you enter the program completion date. This has to be a date in the future, obviously. There is a safeguard in place. Let's say I enter 11/11/2019. That's in the future. So obviously that's an erroneous date because they can't have completed something on a date that didn't happen yet. One thing about this field is to pull up the next screen, you have to enter out of the field. It doesn't just automatically happen. There's no button to hit submit. That's a fix that'll happen in the future, but we didn't want to slow up implementation for something like that. But in this case, it didn't move us forward because the date is in the future. So, oh, we're going to go, that's right. It wasn't 11/11/2019. It was 11/11/2018. So then I'm just tabbing to pull up the next part of the form. There's our completion date. Then we get a verification statement. This is you. I verify that the applicant has successfully completed the designated Oregon Teacher Standards and Practices Commission approved educator preparation program and is in good standing. I further verify that the candidate has met the requirements of OER 584-400 0160 candidate program completion and recommendations, including the provisions of 2B standards for competent and ethical performance of Oregon educators as provided in OER chapter 584 division 420. All of them have that statement. The teacher preliminary has an additional statement. So we're like, yep, this is all just stuff that's required in rules. So I'm gonna click yes, and it pulls up the next, enter your title below. I'm not sure what I put in for my title. Probably my real title. And then your institution, which you're gonna pick from a drop box. And your signature. And then this is your program completion report. That's all that's required for the admin. So we're gonna hit submit. Your program completion report for Colony Vander West was submitted successfully. So we're gonna have a feature of open as PDF. It's not ready, but it will be, not ready right now, but it will be ready. Oh, okay, so it's rudimentarily ready right now. This is what we have right now. It's gonna be cleaned up. So at this point then you can save this. How do they save this? I don't know how they save it. I'm not used to working in.
Candace, it would be like just downloading a PDF. There's a couple questions through the chat that I'd like to read and have either you or Elizabeth respond to.
Okay.
It's about the professional principal part. First question is from Rachel. She writes, what about those who have held licenses, for example, a professional administrator program completer? Would they do the same process?
I didn't understand the question. What about those who have held licenses?
Yes. For example, a professional administrator program completer.
And they're entering the PCR for the professional program?
That's how I understand the question, yes.
Then instead of hitting preliminary, they would hit professional. Sorry, I somehow got logged out. I think I did a back. Here we go, I'm back in. So
the next question is, does the title that they enter need to match the title they put on their form when setting up their accounts? So like you entered
liaison to higher education.
liaison to higher ed. When they enter their titles from the EPP, does that need to match their form that they use to set up their account?
Megan, do you know how that was set up?
Anything to do with that.
Is it like a required field?
So it's the field, yeah, I don't know why we have it there,
Okay.
the title.
When we send you your account number, we will tell you how you, what your title is. So do enter it consistently with how you have signed up. Is it, like, will it reject if you don't? I don't think so, but for consistency, it needs to be consistent. So this is back to the surge. I'm gonna go ahead and show Rochelle. So administrative, so let's say we've got somebody who completed the professional program. Everything's the same except you hit professional instead of principal. Professional, completion date. Oops. 28, and then I'm going to tab to get it to pull that up. I verify, enter your title. Let's say I changed my title. Okey-dokey.
Megan has written back, she says the title field does not validate against other values.
Okay.
So it's not gonna, if they don't enter their title off what they signed up as, it's not gonna kick them out.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we just completed one for the professional.
Candace, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Just to clarify my question, it's really about people who have been licensed a long time and so would not have done clinical practices in e-licensing. Would they still have a clinical practices record because their background check transferred from the old system?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that helps. That was my question.
That's good. Got it. That makes sense. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The point is they must have an account in e-licensing.
Thank you.
Yeah, could you guys hear, you could hear Elizabeth, right? All right. I'm gonna now go to, oh, I just hit submit new PCR and got back to this search screen. So I'm gonna go ahead and now my grandson completed a personnel services program. And here you have the selections or the options available in this area. So let's say he's now a professional social worker. So this is all the same. Then it's the same verification statement. And yada, yada. And submit. So you've seen when it opens as PDF what it looks like for now. So now let's look at the teacher. So for teachers, it is a little different because, as you know, there are different requirements, such as the teachers have to complete with a license and an endorsement. So let's start with the easiest one. Teacher leader, there's currently only one teacher leader program, which is at Lewis and Clark. So we just hit teacher leader and it pulls up the screen that requests program level information. I know there's a question out there about post-bac, and I'm going to have to answer a question that's out there about if the candidate, if it's program specific or candidate specific. I don't know the answer to that right now. Then
if this is a medical emergency, hang up and dial 911. Please listen carefully as our menu options.
can you, anybody mute their phone? I don't know, Trent, I think somebody might have got forced off.
If you were recently seen in the ER and need to schedule.
No, I think somebody's trying to make a call while on this call. So can everybody mute their phones, please? Or their lines?
The same verification statement.
Good morning, neurosurgery.
Oh my
Hi,
God.
I was seen in the ER on July 4th, and I'm following up to schedule an appointment.
Okay, what's your name?
Tina Anctil, A-N-C-T-I-L.
Tina, mute.
I just muted her. I got it.
Oh, good, thank you. I didn't know that's cool. All right, enter your title below, blah, blah, blah. And so it's the same old, right? And submit. All right, now's where the fun begins. See how intuitive this is? It's really pretty awesome. Teacher. So we're going to go in reverse order of complication. The next one is for educators who already have their initial credential and they are adding an endorsement or specialization. So this would be for those of you who have approved programs at the advanced level for in-service educators. So add endorsement or specialization, and then it says you have to add endorsements and or specializations. So you click add and pick from the list. This is more likely going to be something like ESOL. And you can pick one at a time. But if the candidate is completing with more than one endorsement, then you can add another. But it's not set up at this point to be able to like click this and then click this, you know. You're just for now going to have to just do one at a time. Let's say this completer also got their dual language. So they're adding both of those. And then with preliminary and added endorsement, I think this is supposed to go away. This is only supposed to be here for preliminary about the content mastery. So pretend you don't see this. Okay.
Hi, Candace. This is Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, you were correct. The content mastery, just that for that bullet point would remain. They removed the multiple measures, which was correct, but this option does remain.
I think it's supposed to advance to the next field. It's not going to hurt anything if this stays here.
It's supposed to stay there. They got rid of multiple measures, which was correct.
All right. So I don't know why we have this here and not on personnel services and admin. But since it's here.
It's not required for personnel services or admin, but it is.
Oh,
required.
that's right. That's right. Okay. Thank you. You're right. All right. I'm learning a lot with this. So this one says, the candidate completed the appropriate subject matter exams or the commission approved program for a program required endorsement area. So when we get to the preliminary, you'll see why that's listed there. So we're going to say it's this grad level, and this, it is the same verification statement. All right, we've only got one more. None of you will ever forget my grandson's name. All right, and that's teacher and preliminary. So just like the other one, we need to add, and we're going to say elementary multiple subjects. And then this is where it is supposed to give us the option of, so there's supposed to be two boxes here, one for subject matter exam and one for multiple measures.
Hey, Candace, that's correct. This is Megan with NIC. We did catch that this morning, so it's being added in today.
Awesome. So when you get to this point, at the June commission meeting, the commissioners did approve that the EPPs can use multiple measures for completing students. We have not yet provided much guidance about that, just simply because we haven't had time to develop and distribute it. But it needed to be added to the system. So very few of you will be able to check that second box that's not here yet, but will be by the time of launch on Wednesday, late tomorrow. So for now, most of you, if your completers use the traditional route for completing, which is the subject matter test, completion of a program, or a combination, you click the first box. And if they use multiple measures, you click the second box. And then you pick the level, and everything else is the same. Except this. There is an additional statement for the preliminary completers, which says, which one is that?
The last sentence.
The last one. I further verify that the candidate completed the teacher performance assessment in accordance with 584, 400, and 120 teacher candidate performance assessments. So what this is this is our way for making sure that they completed EdTPA if it's required, or work sample, or an EPP developed assessment plan. I don't know of any EPP developed. So right now, as far as I know, they are either completing EdTPA or work sample, and there's only like 4 areas where we do not now require EdTPA. When I send out the list to those of you who will be submitting that says what your sign up is and that sort of thing, I will send you a link to where that information is. I'm going to just show you. I'm going to send you a link to EdTPA handbooks for Oregon to this page. And this tells you which programs require EdTPA. So these are the endorsement areas. This is the handbook that's required if EdTPA is required, and the passing score. I'll show one that doesn't require SPED. The commission intentionally only required EdTPA for SPED in the generalist area. The other SPED areas do not. So that says no EdTPA is required for this field. So this is how you'll know if EdTPA is required or not. You'll all need to make sure that you're working with your EdTPA folks to get that information in order to submit the PCRs. That is everything I have. Let me just look at my notes real quick to see if I missed anything. If you have questions, please unmute and ask away.
Well, I'm going to jump in. This is Trent. I'm going to jump in really quick. There's a question or two on the chat feature that I want to just read aloud and have it responded to for the good of the group. Question number one comes from Susan Helbeck. She writes, it appears that we no longer have to add actual test scores and test data. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The candidates, candidates from Oregon that test in Oregon, we automatically get a copy of their test scores. And I believe it's the candidate's responsibility to make sure that we have all their test scores. Is that right? Elizabeth says they
Shouldn't have to do anything,
okay.
but we'll ask them for them if we don't have them.
Yeah, they'll be, they'll get an incomplete notice and a contact from TSPC if they're supposed to have something on file and we don't.
Great. And the other one, I don't know if Megan can unmute and just respond to this for the good of the entire group, because I think this is more geared toward Megan from NIC. Do you recommend a specific browser that supports this licensing platform, or is any browser good for use on this? Again, just to get it on the record.
Correct. So any browser should be good to use for this, although we do find that Internet Explorer sometimes has difficulties. Any other browser should work.
Yeah, so if you're in Internet Explorer and working it and you find it does weird things like, I don't know, doesn't work in some way, then go ahead and just use another Explorer and that should take care of the problems. Any other questions? Does anybody foresee any concerns? And you know, you're not limited to just saying this now, but as you kind of work with this, I think we've anticipated any potential problems there might be, but you never know. So if you come up with something, do follow up with the email, or if you have a question now, that'd be fine too.
Hey, Candace, this is Annie. I have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I typed it in the chat box, but I don't think that our most recent graduates submitted their test scores with their application. When I walked with them through the application, it didn't ask for test scores. So do you know if you guys have received them separately, or have you asked the candidates to send those in?
So they were attending UP when they took the tests?
Yes.
So those were automatically sent to TSPC. So
Okay.
TSPC automatically receives test scores from Pearson and ETS for any tests taken at Oregon EPPs.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. And Anne also has one question. I have an additional question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I work with students who are often licensed in another state, like Washington. They may or may not
choose to apply for or get an Oregon license when they're doing an add-on endorsement.
Yeah.
And so I'm concerned about how we are able to report those completers to TSPC if they don't have a record, if they haven't applied for clinical clearance in Oregon because they're already licensed in a neighboring state and they don't plan to apply for an Oregon license. How can we report that? In the past, we've been able to report them as completers to TSPC, whether or not they decided to follow up and apply for the license themselves. In the current system, it sounds like maybe there's not a mechanism for us to report completers without them getting themselves an account. If they don't get themselves an account, are we out of compliance with our reporting duties? I'm not sure we can enforce somebody who's not interested in setting up an Oregon account to go through that hoop. That question makes sense.
So they don't have to, so can they submit a PCR? Oh, can you go ahead and mute again, Annie? Can they set up an account? That's me. Okay, Trent, do you know why I'm making all that noise now? Dang. Okay, I'm just gonna. So what happens if they sit down to do a PCR and the person doesn't have an account? Can they still submit the PCR?
No.
Yeah, so they have to have an account. They don't have to apply for a license, but they have to have an account. We have to have something to attach it to.
But the question, I think, is more around, is the EPP required to report people who are never going to apply for an Oregon license?
Oh, I get it. I'm sorry, I missed what, okay. At this point, you are only required to report certain categories of people. I'll have to look that up and tell you who it is. I will say that the program approval committee is looking at potentially requiring reporting for everyone, but no action has been taken. There's just going to be discussion about it at a PAC meeting. And then if the PAC members decide that that's a good idea, with the reason being, we don't have a clear picture of who all is completing in Oregon. We have a partial picture. So there will be discussion about that, but at this point, no. But they do have to have an account, but they don't have to apply for a license.
Candace, this is Sharon. Can I add a piece to that for
Yes.
clarification?
Yeah.
So my understanding is that even candidates who are completing their field experiences out of state with no intention of ever applying to Oregon still have to complete the clinical practice registration process.
So I'm sorry, I'm going to ask if you're not muted, could you mute? It might be me making that noise, but I didn't do anything different and it's driving me nuts. Okay.
Does completing the clinical practice application require, I guess do they have to get fingerprints, or can they just kind of create a record in the system to tie these PCRs to?
Yeah, but it doesn't make sense to me that they would have to get fingerprinting done in Oregon if they're not going to get licensed in Oregon. And Elizabeth is agreeing with that too. So if they're never going to teach in Oregon, they don't have to get the fingerprint clearance. That's the problem of the state they're working in. All righty. Other questions? These are good questions. You're a hard group to stump.
Candace, this is Steve Tillery. When you have a candidate that has completed an endorsement program and it asks for program completion, is it, or anytime it's asking for program completion, is it just completion of that program you're recommending them for, or are you going back to when they finished your program for a teaching license?
Yeah, good question. This is strictly for the program you're completing them for. This takes the place of the C2 online, which was the fast track for teachers, or just a regular C2. So this is, that system is gone now, and this is its replacement.
All right. And also, Candace, I noticed when you were doing the preliminary teacher, oftentimes we have candidates that completed the preliminary and second endorsement like ESOL. Can you, and you didn't click on this specifically, but I noticed there was an add button. Can you, when you submit for a preliminary, can you also include an endorsement there as well?
You sure can. There you go. Here's elementary multiple subjects. So we add that and then add ESOL.
Thank you.
Click, yeah. And in the future, we're gonna try and make it so you can, click as many as you need, like by hitting Control, like you usually can in systems. But right now, this is pretty fast and straightforward anyway.
Okay.
There is not currently a limit on how many can be selected here. Just as a reminder, it does say in rule that if you have candidates completing with more than 2 endorsements, we need to be talking about that with TSPC. We need to have a conversation about what that looks like in terms of field experiences in particular.
Hi, Candace, this is Sharon. If I could provide clarification on the background clearance and who needs to go through that with TSPC.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Currently, Division 400, number 14, does require that no matter where the candidate is placed, even if it's an international placement, they do have to go through clinical practice registration, including the background clearance and fingerprinting with TSPC. So that's Division 400, number 14.
Really? Division 400.
I put the information in the chat box if you want to see that there.
I don't know how to see the chat box without it messing up my share. Do you have the division number? I mean, yeah, it's 584, 400.
Let me see if I can get to that just a second.
And while she's doing that, if any of you also have questions, keep them coming. Sharon's kind of our ad hoc staff member. Going through the transition I feel like we've survived it now, but all of us that work with programs are new within 5 years. Elizabeth is our old timer at 5 years. I'm coming up on 4, but everybody turned over in a really short period of time. So it was Sharon and several others were particularly helpful.
Thanks, Candace. I did find it. It's 0140.
0140, thank you. And I want to also, while I'm thinking of it, thank Sharon, Lisa Chin, and
Lisa Todd.
Oh gosh, wow, Lisa Todd. I haven't done that for a while. Jennifer Bridgewater from Pacific, Lisa's from PSU, and Margaret Wright from SOU all helped with field testing of this. So appreciate that a lot. We went to our old timers and Jennifer, who proclaimed she's good at breaking things. So, all right, so where was that in here, Sharon? About 14.
It's in Division 400, 0140, number 14.
So, to me, prior to candidate contact with as part of their commission rule, and must verify the candidate. So I'll talk to Tony about that. So this is to ensure that that anybody that's going to be working with Oregon students, but that sure isn't what it says.
Candace, actually the intention really was for candidates working with any student. There was a clear intention by the commission that adopted this rule that even if they were out of state or out of country, that they go through TSPC's process. And the new commission looked at that rule, but that was the intent originally.
Okay. Do you remember about when that was?
This is part of the redesigned rule package, but even prior to redesign, this was a requirement since even the 1990s.
Okay.
Candace, could I add one thing?
Uh-huh.
I noticed I'm just new to my position, but I noticed that verification from other states with background checks was provided to us. It was a PDF file for our candidates who were doing their clinical experience out of state.
Okay.
So, for example, we have a student who's doing their work in Washington, and I have a background check that was a certification from the state of Washington that was sitting in their file.
Okay. Good add. Any other questions? What do you think? Does it seem pretty straightforward? One thing I wanted to make sure to let you know is we do have a limit right now on who can be pulled up on the public search feature. Now that's not it. That's not this. That is, but this matters to you because I think you all are going to be using this feature quite a lot. Right now, this is limited to people with Oregon licenses. So that's a fix that we hope will be done very soon. Just wanted to make you aware of that. The other thing I wanted to make sure you knew is that one of the things that is being done with this is changing the culture. It made sense that the EPPs were reliant on TSPC for a lot of information when there wasn't an option, but the candidates are now empowered to own their information, and part of the efficiency of this is that the candidates have a higher degree of responsibility for making sure that they work with their EPPs. In particular, we're transitioning away from providing the candidates background clearance date. When the candidates clear their background check, we need to have you be working with them to let you know that it's happened and the date that it happened. So that you know that information will be on the PDF that is generated. But in terms of getting there, you need to be working with them to make sure that they're giving you that information now.
So I have a question. This is Ann Rasmussen at UP. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
On the old educator lookup, we used to be able, if we had access to candidates' birth date or social, kind of log in to access a little bit more information about, what they'd received from us and what TSPC had received from us, candidates, and processing, we could see the email from TSPC saying we're missing your transcript, and we could actually follow up with the candidate to say, hey, it looks like your application's incomplete. With the new lookup, I don't think we have access to that level. Is that something that will be granted at a certain time? It was very helpful in terms of advising candidates who may not have read their email very closely.
This is Elizabeth, and the answer is no, you will not, because the license is ultimately the responsibility of the educator. So we're trying to start to break down this idea that these educators have a lot of people doing a lot of things for them. They can see that in their account, and they can log in, and people are doing it. It's working now in other ways. So hopefully that will continue. The PDF that's created from the PCR after you submit it is going to appear to them as a document in their account. They'll be able to see that. So they'll know right away that they can log in and see that, hey, they submitted the program completion report.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, but we need them to start to look at things themselves. And districts shake their head yes at me when I bring that up with them. They're very much a fan of that most of the time.
Sure. Sometimes what's helpful for us is when a student is actually misinterpreting something that TSPC has told them quite explicitly, being able to access ourselves the language the TSPC has used to communicate to the student has sometimes been helpful in, eliminating some confusion that the student has. But I also understand where you're coming from there.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Steve Tillery again. One of the emails that was sent out mentioned that we could prioritize specific students. Case in point would be students that are dependent upon their Oregon license to begin in another state, that it begins earlier, or an international student that their hiring is dependent upon actually seeing a license. Will we be receiving information about how to prioritize and kind of maybe have students processed a little quicker that their job is dependent upon it right now?
Yeah, we haven't nailed down the nuts and bolts of that. I'll be working on that today and tomorrow, and I'll be communicating with the whoever has been designated as the primary account holder on how to do that. On your end, please make sure that you've worked with your candidate to make sure they've done everything they need to, which is completing an application and paying the fees and making sure their transcripts are all here and anything else that they need to do. And then on your end, if you'll be thinking about who you need to, I've been trying not to use the words fast track or expedite, because this isn't something that will be an ongoing process. This is our effort to make sure nobody slips through the cracks, because we've been delayed on getting this process implemented. Please use a lot of discretion. This isn't for people who would feel a lot more comfortable if this was done. It's for people that need to have their applications put at the head of the line. And expect something from me within the next couple of days on how to navigate that.
So just to add to that, right now we know the background check is taking about a month, and all of your new candidates go through a background check. Not just, they've already done their fingerprints, but we do a law enforcement data systems check. We look at the NASDAQ clearinghouse. We sometimes check social media, but right now we're doing some programming that's hopefully going to push a lot of those applications forward. So if they applied in May, we're working right now on applications received about April 17th. The first day, for some reason, the first day we launched this thing in April was one of the biggest days we've had in many, many months for numbers of applications. It was nearly 200. But background checks were somewhere around the end of May. So even when we talk about the word fast track right now, it's not going to be what it used to be. I will also have access to reporting, and I will know if an application has moved into an evaluator queue, which means it has passed the background, and I will give those lists to the evaluators, and they will work on those ahead of some others. So if you know of any individuals that are in a certain, I'm not going to get hired if I don't kind of a situation, then let us know those. But I'll talk more with Candace about exactly how we want you to report those to us. And how we'll be able to leverage the report.
And thank you, Elizabeth and Candace. I realize that the Oregon schools seem to have gotten the message really well. I think where this is coming up is students that are in other states that don't maybe acknowledge the ability for them to go ahead and start with a license in process. Thank you.
And sometimes on people going out of state, I contacted New Mexico for someone a couple of weeks ago. So we do, Tony and I and Trent have contacts outside of Oregon in all the state agencies. So we can be helpful that way.
So just to, this is Anne, I want to clarify the talking about the timeline. So let's say somebody finished their program in May and they've submitted everything on their end such that, you know, if we submit their application this week as soon as we're able, what's the processing time estimate for an application that has all the pieces together for a preliminary license, you know, and we hit the PCR this week?
So
is there a ballpark?
let's clarify. Is the application considered complete when the candidate does all of their requirements, or it doesn't have to wait for the PCR, right?
Yes.
It does. Okay, so that's to Elizabeth then.
So given where we are with the background checks right now, it's probably going to be about 5 weeks.
Okay.
From the
and is that any different with a teacher who might be licensed who's doing an administrator license for the first time, or somebody who's adding an endorsement? In other words, somebody who's not getting their first license in Oregon, are the processing times similar for those add-on or adding an administrator?
So for somebody who's just in line, it's about 12 weeks right now. April 17th is the date we're working on. And that 5-week estimate is from the date of their application.
Got it.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Kenda. This is Evelyn Paredes from UU. Going back to the test scores, now that we don't have to enter the student test score in the system, my question is, what is the process for candidates then to submit the test score supporting documentation? With this new system, will they have to still use the email system to submit their report, or can they use this new updated system to upload their test scores?
So that should be an automated process. We receive data files from both ETS and Pearson every week, usually on a Friday. They're usually uploaded on Mondays. We know that we've had a few problems with that, but not very many. And we do know what those problems are. So as long as the students have told the testing company to send it to TSPC, they shouldn't have to do that. If it's our test they're taking, it should come to us automatically. So if you start to see problems with that, please let me know, and we'll dig in a little deeper and find out why ETS and Pearson aren't sending us those test scores.
Okay, so now we eliminate the submission of test score via email.
Yes, we shouldn't have to have them, and most of the time when we get them via email, we already have them electronically.
Okay, and in the cases that they did not select TSPC to receive the test score, what's the process in place?
Then they'll have to submit their paper or the PDF of the test score through contact.tspc.
Oh, okay, excellent, thank you.
And they can upload that too. They can actually upload some documents now too.
And
I have a question about system capacity. Because we're going into a live system on the 10th, and I'm fairly certain that there are a number of us programs that are going to be submitting PCRs for our completers. How is the system going to handle all of the capacity that will be coming in?
Megan, can you field that one?
Hey, one more time, please.
It was a question about capacity, because basically all of the EPPs are going to be submitting all of their PCRs like in a small period of time. Are there concerns about system overload?
Yeah, we do not have any concerns around that.
Good question.
Yeah, very good question. Thank you.
Just as a general FYI, anytime you all have student information that you need to submit, you do send it to that contact .tspc@oregon.gov email address. And on that kind of thing, you do not need to CC me. So that is for submitting candidate information.
One more question, Candace, going back to submitting candidate information. Also, the ETPA, do they have to use the email system to send a copy of the ETPA, or it will be in place in the system?
Yeah, the only thing that we're doing for EdTPA in this system is the verification statement that the PCR submitter has to verify that they're in compliance with rule around EdTPA, and then it will be monitored as either part of the annual report or program report or site visit process to make sure that EPPs are big picture getting it.
They don't have to submit it as part of the licensure application. We don't need the TPA score.
I'm thinking that it's going to be part of the field audit. We'll be looking for the candidate scores as part of that. Whether it's also required a little more frequently, I don't know yet.
Okay, so to simplify this, students now, when they complete the program, they have to make sure that they send the official transcript to TSPC, and they don't have to upload a test score to TSPC if they select the TSPC to receive the scores, and that's it.
Yeah, that's a program responsibility. So it's not required, TPA completion is not required for licensure. So somebody coming from out of state doesn't have to complete a TPA, but it is required for completion of Oregon programs. So that's kind of the distinction. That's why it's an EPP responsibility to make sure that that's being done completely and correctly.
Okay, thank you.
Question. Well, we're actually over time. Thank you all so much. I think this has been very valuable. Do let me know if you have feedback, concerns. I think other than that, we're good to go. And I will be in touch with you to let you know when it has launched and when we're good to go. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.